Welcome to Developing the Whole of You as a Person, and I am Majesty AliNICOLE WOW, and I'm excited to be sharing on this topic with you during this time. This is going to be primarily in the format of a mini masterclass and really just making you aware of what it really takes to start developing the whole of you and having some expanded awareness around this particular focus. And the reason why I wanted to do a little mini masterclass of this nature is because it is important in terms of how we are advancing, we are expanding, we're evolutionizing, so to speak, into completely different individuals than what a lot of the traditional self-help has been guiding us to be in terms of being your best self and self-improvement. But primarily, those structures don't actually really develop the whole of an individual, and at least not on the levels that, again, we should be evolving into, especially with the shaping and changing of a new world. So I just want to say off the top that I do have some expanded resources as it relates to this particular topic and also developing the whole of you as a professional. And you can find those within the description. So I want to jump right in just to talking about the importance of developing the whole of you. Now, when we think about development, and we have different areas that we develop in, from early childhood and then also career development, and even that's categorized in leadership development, and then there's personal development, professional development. There are a lot of different categories of developing. But it is important that we do focus on the whole of who we are. And though we can develop compartmentalizedly in a sense, but oftentimes people don't really focus on developing themselves as a whole. Now, why is this? Primarily because society, some of the structures have come up with these templates of what success should look like. It's more of a cookie cutter type of framework. And so a lot of people chase that dream, especially in America, chase the American dream. And again, that's giving some type of template or blueprint for success that people are subscribing to and thinking that this is what is going to make me the best version of who I am. But rarely does it actually really focus on really obtaining or achieving wholeness. Now, I know there are some schools of thought that focus on that you are already whole and you just need to remember and reclaim that wholeness, so to speak. But even with that school of thought, there's a little bit of a flawed premise because it too is giving a definition or a framework of what wholeness should look like. And wholeness is going to be something that is very much individualized. And yes, can people define what wholeness looks like for them? They can, but even them having a self-definition of it could be limited if they aren't actually pulling out their soul's blueprint or template for wholeness. Again, that's something that's going to be customized uniquely according to you. So I want to go back to talking about the self-help industry and how, though it's been a lot of good done in terms of self-empowerment, self-improvement, and really goal mastering, so to speak, and motivating people and inspiring people to move into that best version of themselves. But as I mentioned before, that's typically not what's happening. People are moving into the best version, again, of a system, of a framework. And anytime they operate outside of that, then you have kind of the society backlash, if you will, of looking at individuals who are disruptive in a way is being threats to what they want to keep as the status quo and not allowing individual expression to happen on levels without there being some type of pushback, to that. And so when people don't get to fully express who they are, that greater potential, they are not expressing the whole of themselves. And it's going to be very difficult to express the whole of who you are if in fact that aspect is not developed, if it isn't cultivated. So I want you to just imagine that there is this wholeness vault within you, all right? And it contains data and archives and wisdom that primarily pertains to who you are as an individual. It is your unique encoding, so to speak. So it's your wholeness encoding template. And just like when we think about in the early photography days where development took place in a dark room, right? Now, today we have digital and you don't have to really go through all of that, digital cameras and everything. That's a pretty seamless, more easier process to develop pictures. And then, of course, back in the day, there was the Polaroid where you snapped it and it came out. But if we really wanted to get quality pictures and high resolution pictures from quality cameras, so to speak, then it went through a process and had to go through that dark room, right? So within the negatives, they're contained what would be the image, right? So you can look at your encoding and blueprint to be much like that in a sense. So it has to be developed. It has to go through some type of process for the expansion of the image to come forth. Now, something that I teach in terms of new human metamorphosis, and this contains the whole of an individual, and especially the personal development side, is that you do go through a personal development stage of metamorphosis, but not from a transformational standpoint, the way that analogy is typically used as a caterpillar transforming into a butterfly, but this is more evolutionary because evolution produces something different than what it was. And yes, transformation is included in that, but it is more of evolving state that is a continuum. So that metamorphosis would be considered the human cocoon experience, the dark room, in a sense, that is developing an individual so that they can come into a completely different, unique expression of who they are, all right? And this is not a cookie cutter framework. This is a person developing according to what is in their soul's wholeness template, all right? So once a person starts undergoing that type of process, then they start unlocking this wholeness encoding, and it then gives them kind of the blueprint, if you will, at every phase, how they need to be developing themselves. And again, because this template is about wholeness, it will speak to the whole of one's experience. Now, let me say this, wholeness is not ever a one and done deal. It is wholeness for a phase because there'll be different levels of the wholeness to be achieved. That's what the human experience is about, is being on an adventure of really discovering the truth of who you are according to God or source's definition and perspective, why you were put here, and that is an evolutionary type of journey. So in terms of continuing with the development, you develop from stage to stage, phase to phase, and then ultimately you come into some expansion that you're able to work with that level of development. But then that will too go through another metamorphosis at some point and break down so that you keep evolving, so that you keep expanding, all right? So let me just shift to talk back about bring up again in terms of the personal development, the self-help, and why that particular focus or development is not serving moving forward. Again, primarily because it has how-tos and tips to do X, Y, and Z. And again, that's all based on a system or a framework. And even some of the works that try to get you into your individuality, there's still this template that's telling you the right and wrong way to do that. Well, when you're in your own unique information, you're going to pull out what's right for you. And some of that will buck up against some of the institutionalized types of frameworks. where when you're in this wholeness development as a person, personal development metamorphosis, a lot of the old data of who you are is going away, and also the data of the current world and the old world won't serve you. So that's why a lot of the professional or personal development and self-help is really not helping individuals for what is emerging. So a process that I use, and I've been using this over a decade and within my works, is intentional journaling and the power of intentional journaling. And I have published over 300 intentional journal style publications on Amazon, and they're for different industries, different niche focuses. And what I find is that whenever you are doing intentional journaling, which I'll make some distinctions, because intentional journaling is different than just traditional journaling. Traditional journaling involves expression, more like a diary. It can be an emotional brain dump, so to speak, where you write down ideas. It's just kind of your sacred space. And that type of, I guess, leveraging that type of format is still extremely beneficial, and I still use it. But intentional journaling is about a specific focus in a specific topic, and the publication or the sacred space that you have set aside is specifically for that topic. And it's always great to have at least 3 to 5 primary topics that you are focused on at one time, because that is cultivating more of the wholeness. So it doesn't look like someone who's just all immersed into their career, and then self-care and those different areas are kind of just left, they're just neglected, right? So you're able to be able to track what your current status is, if you will, and what's emerging. I like to say it's your old brain and your new brain simultaneously working together. And that really is kind of the metamorphosis, is you're able to see what's coming up from you in terms of your thoughts and in terms of how you feel about a specific topic, and then watch your growth in that area and have it in that incubation type of phase. So when you have 3 to 5 areas that you are focused on that relate to being the primary areas of your wholeness, your well-being, when you have it categorized, then you can go and look through that sacred space, and then come and put your evolved information, so to speak, into what is called a commonplace book. And that can be a notebook or a specific journal that's set aside to really flesh out the wholeness. So everything that you've learned, you now come and put that into that particular space. And that's what you can read from and start to develop your more expanded game plan, so to speak. And even though you'll be doing this in your other journals, but when you can get to a point where you do have things working cohesively, now you can witness your wholeness on a different level. But it is good to have them in the categories so that you can extract, if you will, what your wholeness template is saying to you about that specific area. All right. So this is about really evolving the wholeness factor of who you are, because your state of wholeness at one phase could be completely different at another. All right. So like I said, it's never just a one and done. It is a continuation, but being able to operate fully from your wholeness template, that soul level, that's where life is, if we want to call it magical, or so, that's when you're truly living. And that goes far beyond just, oh, I have the success with my job, and I have this type of lifestyle. I'm a nice person, a charitable person, and a religious person. So it goes really beyond a lot of labels, and it is just the embodiment of a wholeness experience that's playing out through you. All right. And the core essentials of life definitely will be showcased and demonstrated to not personify, but I guess to say, to demonstrate your wholeness, right? Because you want that wholeness to be demonstrated. but you definitely want to have a holistic development process going on for yourself, then at this stage, just full immersion into some specific areas or a specific area that could cause you to be distracted from really well-roundedly developing yourself, is that, if that makes sense. So I want to jump back to talking about the importance of developing the whole of who you are as a person. Who are you being? Who are you as a person? And do you like who you are and who you have become? Because that's important. If all of your accolades or degrees or jobs or so, achievements, if those were to be stripped away, what would you have? Would you still be happy with who you are as an individual? Would you still feel a level of wholeness enough to, if we want to call it, rebuild from that place? How would you be being if all of what you've known in your current identity were to go away? So it's just something to think about. So when you're developing, again, the wholeness of who you are, that wholeness could reveal to you things that you never even considered doing, yet there's such a natural organic part of you that you've dismissed and never even thought twice about it. But until the light is shined on it, especially in the womb, if you will, or in the cocoon, then you get to see, no wonder certain areas of my life weren't working the way that I desired, is because here was a missing piece of my wholeness that I didn't even realize. Gifts and talents and also ways of being, And so once that awareness springs up, then this is where we want to start the developmental aspect around this. And for some individuals, it would be more of an integration. And integration is still a part of development too, because it's merging, integrating, incorporating something into something else, which means that there's a developmental relationship that will be taking place amongst that merger. So I'm feeling guided to talk a little bit about making some distinctions with developing, because a lot of times we do think about developing, and I actually shared just then, we think about development in terms of what I meant about a picture being developed, or when you're teaching, when you're learning something. But developing is just kind of an evolutionary term too. So when you hear like a developing story, all right? And even storms, they say a storm is developing, right? Something is queuing up. And what I know to be true is that from our wholeness template, there is always something developing, always something queuing up, right? Always something queuing up. We have to be in tune with who we are in order to know what that is. And this goes back to the intentional journaling aspect. When you are focused intently on those specific categories, then that's bringing out, it's extracting, if you will, the diamonds within your depth. It's bringing forth the evolution. It's what's emerging. And then it's developing you in a multi-level type of way. And so this is really important. Again, what makes an individual whole is not necessarily something outside of themselves telling them this is how you achieve wholeness. It really is being able to draw within from your own unique encoding, your own unique information, all right? And so whether you have a specific journal that's a topical focus, or even if it is a traditional one, it will serve you tremendously. But I do know that the intentionality aspect of working in categories and then being able to witness your wholeness, it's phenomenal. So I want you to think for a moment to see yourself as a home, all right, a really nice home. And we know within a house, there's going to be bedrooms, bathrooms, kitchens, the main focuses, right? But there are different areas in the house that you don't have to have. But you have to look at what is going to make the house functional. And each room has its own function, yet the house operates as a whole, right? So it's kind of the same with you, that when you build your life anew, it's like you're building a house or you're reconstructing a house. What goes in the bathroom is not going to go in the kitchen, right? So when you were fixing the bathroom up, you were intently focused on fixing that and developing that in that way. And the same with the different rooms. But again, if someone comes to visit the home, then they get to go in the bathroom. They'll pretty much probably see the rooms that are exposed, whether it's a kitchen or so, your den, a living room. So those things will be on display, but they're all built separately. And when you add furniture into them, that's a separate experience, yet it's in a holistic environment. All right. So that's just kind of an analogy, just to be able to see that. And the reason why I use a home is because, like, you are the place where you reside. It's not a physical place. It's your inner world that is creating the external reality. So how you develop yourself internally plays a significant part as it relates to how you function, how you live out. All right. Yeah. So it's really important to be able to see it in this manner. Now, something I'm being guided to talk about, because I kind of get this feeling that some of you may be thinking in terms of going back to self-help. Well, I've read books on wholeness and I've been developing myself in that way. But again, 9 times out of 10, it's giving you a structure that can be common to anyone. So this is different. Yes, there are definitely some fundamentals and some core concepts that will apply to each and every person as they start developing themselves. But again, you want your own authentic blueprint to come forth. And if you are following a step-by-step structure, so to speak, that is not going to bring forth that greater wholeness template that wants to come forth. Now, as I mentioned, the self-help and self-improvement type of experience has been beneficial, but it was beneficial in an era where the world was needing more of that to bring forth self-expression and to start kind of not focusing on some of the exterior things and doing the inner work, and then being able to build upon this best version of yourself as it relates to the improvement factor. But again, in this emerging new world, things are different. And so the developmental processes have to be different, because again, when you get into your unique framework, then it will definitely provide for you what it is that you need to start cultivating that. Now, can that involve some self-help books, tapes? And it absolutely can. But you'll be more aware of how to leverage that within your experience without getting caught in, I have to do it this way, unless your template is giving you guidance to actually follow that step by step. But 9 times out of 10, that won't be. There will be some distinction in terms of how you play that out, for sure. Now, some of this may sound common and basic knowledge, but I want you to imagine that this is a multidimensional type of experience. So your first level of awareness around this particular topic is just one level of awareness. And I talked earlier about expanded awareness coming forth. So this is where you continue to expand the whole of who you are, the evolution of who you are, and find out what that wholeness factor is for each and every phase. All right. So now something I want to talk about in terms of areas to really start focusing on developing the whole of you. There are some core areas, and I call them the 5 essentials. And basically, outside of life's mastery, because we could put that in just a category, a holistic category itself. There are subcategories within there, which is the personal, professional, the spiritual, the educational type of mastery, that journey. But the 5 core essentials are what are primary to life in general. That's going to be lifestyle, recreation, it's spirituality, wholeness, health and well-being, and then your life's purpose or career, and education can be in that too. And then there's the wealth and finances. So those are the 5 core essentials, okay? And when I talked about the spiritual evolution and the wholeness factor, that is dealing with the soul, all right? Dealing with the spirit of who you are in that level of development. So you want to make sure that those 5 areas are ones that you are continuously working on. Playing from both sides of the track is a simultaneous experience. And going back to the journaling aspect, when you can apply the journaling aspect to these different areas, it's going to make a significant difference in your life. And I will have a link to one of my authors pages that have a variety of different publications and journal style formats, for different industries, different niche markets. And then you can look through there and see examples of how you can actually be intentional about developing the whole of you by looking at their different categories, different publications, and they do pertain to those life essentials. Now, you don't have to stay just within those life essentials, because if you want to develop a hobby even more, you want to bring forth a gift a certain way. So you have to allow this to be an experience that's going to benefit you for the short, mid, and long-term success goal, if you will, but it's going to benefit others tremendously. Because when you can be that whole version of yourself, the best whole version of yourself, then you are definitely making your mark in the world and benefiting people in a very huge way, So before I get ready to wrap this up, something that I do want to, I guess, create the space for is you tapping into that wholeness blueprint, all right? That template, because it's a trajectory within you that wants to come forth. And so we'll take a few moments, going to do some deep breathing real quick and be present to see what's emerging for you, what's rising to the top, what's the creme de la creme that's coming up, all right? So everyone take a nice deep breath, please. Okay. So let's just be in this sacred space of your wholeness. We're going to be very intentional. And if you have pen and paper, as I mentioned earlier, it's good to take notes here. So just being present with the wholeness of who you are. So ask your wholeness template, what are 3 to 5 things that you should know about your wholeness factor, about developing yourself? 3 to 5 things that you should know, 3 to 5 things that your wholeness template wants you to know. So just take a few moments to jot that down, right? And so as you're being present with getting that awareness, this is going to help you in terms of how to start the process, especially around the intentional journaling aspect. What journals you should be theming or again, exploring some of the ones that I have that are topical and have a jumpstart process, for you. Whatever the 3 to 5 things or areas, that are being revealed to you, again, that's going to be core focuses for you. And I would say probably over the next 30 days that you allow a metamorphosis to take place, that you become intentional about fleshing out those particular areas, all right? And I have more extensive works and trainings around, this particular focus, masterminds. But I thought that this would be a really good way for you to start really focusing on your unique inner wholeness template and starting to bring that information forward so it can help you to know your best next steps. A lot of times people are in confusion, even around materials that they receive, or the self-help or however, because there's something more that's trying to take place, something more that wants to be cultivated, something more that wants to be developed. And this is just bringing forth that more expanded level of who you are. And something else that I teach in other areas, the expanded self versus the higher self. And because there's a lot of focus on the higher self, but when you are the expanded self, that's more longitudinal, latitudinal, is the wholeness. It's not just a vertical experience. It's not just a, moving higher and higher. It's expansive, right? It's rooted and ascending, right? It's a holistic experience. It's breadth and depth, and you want that. It's covering it all. And that's what your wholeness template contains, that type of information for you. And again, it may use different resources to be trigger mechanics just to bring forth something, but primarily you're going to be customizing this new way of developing the whole of who you are. And so a question that you can also sit with is, what does my wholeness factor look like at this phase? For my personal development, what does my wholeness factor look like at this phase? And the reason, again, why this is important is because if you don't develop yourself, the wholeness of who you are, it doesn't matter your profession and how successful you are in other areas. If the wholeness of you, you're not bringing the wholeness of yourself to the world, you're not bringing forth an authentic, true expression. And it doesn't matter, again, professionally, if you're developed, if you are not developed personally. There are several people who have fame and fortune, so to speak. They lack character. They're not developed. They're unhappy. They're not developed as a person, not from a wholeness perspective. And here's the deal. When you are whole, you can help to develop whole people. Whole people develop whole people as it relates to a well-rounded person, all right? So this is bigger than just you and your development. It is to what you're vibrating and putting out in the world and being able to be a contribution on multiple levels, right? So that's why this is really, really important. So this is going to be a time, I'd say, over the next 30 days that you really begin to immerse yourself in the whole of who you are and come to know who you are as a whole being, as a whole individual. And see what your own inner wisdom and your own information tells you about that. And yes, can you kind of measure that up, so to speak, against some of what is out there telling you this is what makes you whole or successful? You can, and some of that may resonate still. But I can guarantee you there's something much more, not just deeper, something much more expansive that is really trying to come in to bring a cohesive unification, a different level of harmonization at this phase, because that's what the new world is birthing. Unique individuality, expression in multiple formats, not the same warmed over self-help hype and everything that's still really keeping people asleep to their greater potential of individuality. You don't want to just be an individual within a system that's following a system that's teaching you how to be unique within that system. You are the economy of yourself, the society of you that, yes, participates in a collective society, so to speak, but you want to be able to show up in the truth, in the wholeness of who you are. And that is what has to be developed. That's what has to be developed and cultivated. No more same old, cookie cutter templates, sea of sameness. Everyone's looking the same, even though they are projecting individual expressions kind of that sameness. And again, that served a purpose for a while. But that is not going to be what the future, the evolution of personal wholeness is about, right? So again, I want you to take the next 30 days to be intentional about journaling on 3 to 5 specific areas or whatever came up for you that you most needed to know, and just being intentional around that. And again, being in full immersion, baptizing yourself in this newness, because it is an embodiment. And then you become a fountain unto yourself. And if you think about a fountain, fountains, they give up water, they throw up water and it comes back down into them, but others benefit from that expression. People come to fountains, they are refreshed, they throw coins and they make wishes. It's a refreshing experience for people when they witness a fountain. So when you can be this personal developed fountain of wholeness unto yourself, it is giving others permission to do that very same thing. In this human experience, it gives the I guess it can invite people also too, if they want to ask you about how you embarked on this, how you became who you are. And though their process will be different than yours in the sense in terms of what's in their blueprint, but the fundamentals will be the same in terms of them going to dig into themselves and be able to find that and discover that, for themselves. So as I mentioned, that I have resources also within the description as it relates to even your professional development and also being able to have a reset in certain areas. And so there's going to be links to different resources and products for a wholeness development type of experience around those life essentials, so to speak. So you'll see that there's a robustness of different levels that you can participate so that you can develop the whole of you. And also those resources are also prompting types of conversational trainings and masterclasses, so designed for you to actually pull out of you. So it's just not informational in terms of just dumping a whole lot. It is developing you so that you can be whole. And yes, there will be some informational types of trainings, but they still are more ones to help you just expand the awareness for the next level, right? What I shared today is very informational in a sense in terms of creating expanded awareness. It's going to be up to you to take this rendering, so to speak, and continue to listen to it over and over and just apply the parts that are ready for you to execute on. Yeah. But you are ultimately creating your own unique system for success based on what is coming out of you from your wholeness template. So I believe I'm going to bring this to a close. I could go on and on for sure with so much more around this particular area because it is very layered. It is very much like what I use an analogy and have different works. It's very much like the Russian nesting doll. And if you're familiar with the Russian nesting doll, it is the doll that contains the dolls within the dolls. And that's how your personal development, in a sense, is much like that. There's this aspect of you, the wholeness, but within you, there are different dimensions of who you are, different levels of wholeness. And you can look at those as different categories, and all of it stacks up into one big doll. But in order to get the maximum experience from that doll, you have to break the doll open, and so that people can see there's multiple dolls within this doll. That's the fascinating experience of the human experience and of you, and getting to explore yourself in this multi-dimensional, multi-trajectory type of way by developing the whole of who you are. So I thank you so much for being a part of this and developing the whole of you as a person. And I hope that this has been valuable for you in terms of your forward movement and expansion of being the absolute best version of who you are in the demonstration of wholeness. Remember, whole people develop whole people. And if you are a leader or influencer, whole leaders and whole influencers develop whole leaders and other whole influencers. And they just exude the wholeness. And that's what goes out to the tribe that they're here to inspire in that way. All right. Well, I'm wishing you the absolute best in this initiative. And I look forward to bringing you more trainings of this nature. And also you can join me for some of my other trainings. And take care and stay blessed.